Hey, it's Egle from Precision Sourcing, and welcome to Her Heads in the Cloud, the podcast where we dive into everything happening in the world of DevOps, cloud, and site reliability engineering. With over 6 years in the industry, I've built a successful DevOps practice from scratch, helping companies connect with the top-tier talent they need to build diverse, high-performing teams. Each episode, I'll be bringing you insights from some of the brightest minds in tech, engineers, leaders, and industry experts. Whether you're here to learn practical tips or hear inspiring stories, you're in the right place. Let's get into it. Today we're bringing you live with Luke Matthews from Brisbane. Very excited to have him as he heads up the cloud and infrastructure practice at Brennan. On that note, I'll let you do a proper introduction, Luke.
Yeah, thanks. Luke Matthews here from Brennan, head of cloud, so managing the consulting practices across infrastructure, network, security, public cloud, model workplace, and end user compute. So a national team of consultants doing project discovery, design, delivery, documentation. Formerly of MOQ Digital, was the Azure Expert MSP Program Manager in MOQ, and also National Technical Services Manager and Head of Managed Services prior to the acquisition from Brennan. Worked in the cloud space for probably 20 plus years with Optus and some AWS startups as well. So got some experience and enjoyed my time at Brennan with the cloud projects team.
Mm-hmm. And that kind of brings us quite nicely onto the cloud adoption trends that we're seeing at the moment. Which brings me to my first question, Luke. What are some of the current trends in cloud adoption, and how do you see them evolving over the next few years?
Yeah, so I was pretty fortunate, I think, end of last year to travel to Chicago for the Microsoft Ignite conference. And while that's a lot of product updates in there, you get to spend a lot of time with peers in the partner community, and also, CTOs, CIOs, and IT managers in the customer landscape as well. Working to understand what's going on in market and what trends and what customers are seeing generally. So that was a pretty good use of time, and helped me understand what's going on. Probably some of the resounding trends we're seeing is uncertainty around the VMware Broadcom acquisition and what that means for customers in the infrastructure hosting space. As well as, Microsoft's continued investment in whether it's, Azure Migrate in terms of migrating to PaaS services directly, and the Azure Local announcement as well, meaning, running Azure on premises as well. So some of the trends we're seeing, I think, probably related to, commercial pressure inside businesses and how that's being managed in the infrastructure and cloud space. Conversations I've had around that sort of thing, people are also talking about multi-cloud and cloud brokerage and arbitrage as well, trying to bring costs down running workloads where it makes the most sense financially, as well as from a right place, right time type circumstance, right?
Yeah, so another exciting year for cloud, to be honest, as we move into 2025.
Yeah, absolutely.
And how would you say, how are hybrid cloud solutions like Azure Local changing the landscape for businesses that rely on on-premise infrastructure?
So Azure Local as well as Azure Arc, I think, how is it changing the landscape? I think what we're seeing, I guess, is Microsoft's continued investment in on-premises services, and maybe that was a little bit unexpected.
Yeah.
It means that, hey, the business itself acknowledges that on-premises services aren't going away maybe as quickly as they expected or at all.
Yeah.
Potentially, the feedback from businesses could be that it doesn't, sometimes it can't make commercial sense to continue to pay for subscription services. So sweating assets makes more sense. And that means, buying on-prem infrastructure for maybe legacy services or services that need to be on the edge or very low latency, that sort of thing. So in, manufacturing or mining. Happily, or maybe most interestingly, they talked about Microsoft has talked about Azure Local being able to slice up GPU. So for
Yes.
the high data and AI machine learning type processing, rather than paying for expensive cloud GPU, you could, buy your own and run that without having to worry about how long you're using it for or for what purposes, because you've spent the money once rather than continuing to spend it over time.
Right.
Similar sort of thing, right? With running Azure Virtual Desktop on Azure Local, getting those session hosts as close to the customer as possible, rather than being in a data center on the internet somewhere. It's pretty important for engineering firms where it's high graphics intensity on a virtual desktop. And look, hybrid cloud solutions. So we're seeing the ability to manage multi-cloud environments become pretty important, and talking with people in Chicago, around the world, that sort of thing, hearing that managing inventory is a major problem for enterprise as well.
Right.
And so if you've got sprawl, or they talked about shadow innovation, not knowing what infrastructure is out there and what's costing you money, potentially Azure Arc for multi-cloud management is an answer to that. Being able to manage all of your infrastructure from inside the one portal, leveraging policy for security and governance, and being able to patch all of your infrastructure from the one place is pretty huge benefits there. It's like a multi-cloud control plane that's realizing the benefit there. It's been a long time coming, I think.
100%. And you've obviously had a lot of skin in the game, a lot of years of experience within the cloud space. And I'm sure you've definitely had your fair share of challenges. So what would you say some of the more common challenges that organizations face when migrating to the cloud? And I guess even more importantly, how can they overcome those?
Yeah. So I certainly know from my perspective, customers' challenges when migrating to the cloud. The often we see, depending on how quickly the project goes, there may be some bill shock in the first couple of months of migration if communication channels aren't maybe as clear as they could be if you're working with a partner.
Yeah.
Just as you're doing a big migration, it's sort of a rehost type conversation. Then maybe the first couple of months, like, we do need to retire some of these services. We've migrated over here, and we need to transform, re-architect, re-platform that to native services. But you're still spending the money on, virtual machines through that process. So you're spending more than maybe you expected, and then over time, as those things get re-architected, the running costs go down over time. So it's you can talk about that in advance and try to cover it off, but until the bills start coming in, it's not really real. And so that's one of the things. And look, I know that AWS will often talk about offering credits in the first couple of months to get over that hurdle. Microsoft treats that process a little bit differently in sort of part funding project services with partners. Sometimes they'll get also sort of alleviate some of that pain. So it's not unknown. It's generally pretty known in the community. Potentially other challenges or things to consider in cloud migrations. It's being able to maintain the appetite to transform the business, and that's about going, okay, well, if we've got this aging infrastructure, we don't want to pay another round of warranty or refresh the service or network. Then we're going to use that money for the project services to get us to the cloud, or transform what we have is native apps or native IP into leveraging native cloud services, whether it's data or that modernization, that sort of thing. So I guess some of the challenges or the sort of end-to-end process with migrations that need to be considered.
And would you say with all the different public clouds, there's constantly new services that are coming out? Would you say for example, if a company is AWS through and through, they've got a whole new bunch of new services, do you think that company should instantly upgrade, or it's not necessarily best case for everyone?
It's interesting, right? So you see large microservices footprints and people that have developed against native services really, really heavily. And then finding as it scales that actually there's probably a better or cheaper or more secure way to do that same thing. So you continue, well, maybe assessing the investment again against modernizing against what new services are coming out.
Yeah.
And we see that even with, Azure DNS, for example, people may run legacy domain controllers in servers in Azure, but, there's a native service that does that. And maybe it was relatively new and people didn't trust it, or, it's become easier to leverage native services over time. So you still need to assess your environment and see what services are running and how you can do things differently or better.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. And I guess on that topic as well, there is constantly new technology emerging and new trends as well. So what innovations in cloud technology are you most excited about? And how do you think that they will impact future businesses?
Look, maybe it's not particularly sexy, but I think IT infrastructure management is being simplified over time, right? So what used to take a lot of people and a lot of overhead is becoming easier and simpler, and that's kind of exciting, right? To do more with the same output or the same staffing footprint or technical resourcing, then great. So it's a business enabler. What other things am I most excited about, or how will they impact business? I think I'd be remiss to say if the integration of AI into business services is new and exciting. We've seen Copilot get a lot of marketing, and it seems like every other software vendor has an AI fairy dust to sprinkle on things. But for what I've seen in terms of practical use cases, the Copilot agent development is pretty impressive. I've seen good use cases, good business benefits against you're grounding it in the data that is native to your environment and not allowing it to go outside of your environment for data, and then leveraging AI against sort of a policy and process, meaning you've got sort of a natural language agent running a business process for you. That's pretty incredible. Like potentially looking for, fraudulent insurance claims inside your business, or, running a annual leave balance policy against your. It all depends on the integrations you can build and the data you have to ground it against. But there's certainly things to be excited about and develop against in there.
And I have to ask, just because you did mention Copilot, do you see yourself perhaps in the near future implementing that or using that in any stance?
So we already do to a smaller extent. We have a sort of a chatbot built internally that we're running proof of concepts.
Nice.
Grounding it in customer proposal content, and say, okay, well, if the customer's asking me this question about what we can do, or some policy or accreditation compliance, then a salesperson could ask the chatbot, hey, do we have this compliance or this, and it'll pull back all the data that we've given it and say, oh, this is where this is referenced previously, and this is what you should go looking for. So already maybe where the internal Brennan team is asking questions about potential capabilities of technology. Chatbots be able to give the answer and reference the source of where that's coming from, and we're able to sort of lock down what it's referencing as well, so it's not hallucinating and giving false information.
It's awesome that you've already got a bit of a roadmap and you've already implemented it to some extent, and obviously I'm sure that will develop even more so over time.
We put guardrails on and we're just testing it out, so no, it's good value at the moment.
Good. And during, obviously, through all of your years of experience, Luke, would you be able to share, could you share a success story of a company that transformed its operations by adopting cloud solutions?
So, maybe not specifically company names, but certainly we've seen some really satisfying use cases over time. And some of these are about, mergers in different businesses in the health sector, struggling to, service customers across lines of business where there's been a merger. Pretty important to to make sure those customers are happy and service, nobody's falling through the cracks as such. And so being able to build a greenfields environment and then bring in all three of those organizations, encompassing security, identity, and all of the internal business services and all the scheduling, that means that business can operate. The huge transformation for the business itself in terms of the workforce's satisfaction, but also maintaining health services in that for the wider community has been pretty incredible to see, and that customer's really, really happy with how that project went, one of our major ones from last year. So front of mind and also really satisfying to see that go through and deliver really well.
No, it is. That is an amazing case study, to be honest.
Yeah.
And I know we've touched upon it briefly, I guess, the beauty of AI and how it's being used. So that brings me on to the topic of AI and machine learning. And how do you think those two are being integrated into cloud services? And what benefits do you think that they would bring to businesses? I know healthcare industry in particular at the moment, AI is pretty much booming for them. It's making their lives a lot easier, or the aspirations that they have for it.
Yeah. Look, it's not my primary sort of role or remit, but I've seen it in terms of, we will put the foundation and platform and plumbing together for customers, and then really enable a data platform to come across the top of that, and plug in all of this information that allows, whether it's Power BI reporting across the top of that, and then it's about, I think, the insights based on the data that's being scraped from the wider business. I've had a number of customer conversations. Maybe front of mind is in manufacturing and things, being able to pull telemetry from the edge plant type operations into into central data location and be able to draw insights from that. The CIO made a sort of off the cuff comment. I know what's happened. I don't need reporting to tell me what's happened. I need insight into what changes I can make now, what the impact of that is.
Right.
And enabling that with modern data services and machine learning against existing telemetry data is incredibly powerful. And that's, something that's, it's enjoyable to be a part of that sort of thing in terms of the industry developments as well, making, business process easier and making lives easier as well.
Yeah, no, 100%. There was a customer we had recently, and they're heavily implementing AI. And for example, if you're in the healthcare industry and you just go to do a CT scan, usually you need to wait at least a few days, if not a couple of weeks, for the results. And they're thinking of getting basically an AI tooling to be able to produce those results quicker. But then it's a very gray area, because some people will be, extremely pleased that they'll be able to receive results at quicker time. On the other hand, you'll have some people that are like, well, I don't really want to take recommendations that are written out from an AI. So it will be interesting how it's perceived later down the line.
Yeah. That's interesting, right? The 23andMe case with the I want to say the American Medical Association, and how 23andMe was saying, okay, due to these genetic markers, your propensity for this condition is this sort of percentage, and they were sort of shut down and excluded from that sort of commentary because they weren't medical practitioners, so they couldn't give advice, even though it's just genetic data, right? I'm not sure where I really land on that, but it was an interesting sort of adjacent comment.
Yeah,
I don't know if AI can claim to interpret CT scans.
No, it is an interesting one. And I guess finally that brings us on to cloud adoption, which you've of course done heaps of. What advice would you give to organizations that are just starting their cloud adoption journey?
So generally we talk to customers potentially with aging infrastructure, or they're recontracting with service providers, or really feeling they're not getting the benefits of cloud in market. But cloud strategy, I think, is the first place to start, right? So how are you going to measure your success? What are the pain points you're solving for? So if you're looking at, hey, I want to adopt cloud, you can sort of say, well, why? What's the driver for that? And how do you measure success? And so once you can do that, you can sort of say, okay, well, let's play back to the wider business. What are the benefits to the business that you're hoping to achieve? And then you can, solution around that, whether it's migrating legacy services to a SaaS platform. I'm not sure anybody runs their own internal, HR platform anymore. It's all SaaS, right? So even I think about, intranets and things and teams and modern ways of working and all of that is SaaS platforms now as well. So it's really about being able to measure the success criteria of what you're trying to achieve. And then, okay, well, let's design solutions around helping you hit targets and helping you, increase your own customer satisfaction. So.
And when it comes to if a company has zero cloud involvement and they want to adopt a cloud journey and go down a particular way, but they're not sure which avenue to go down, do you think in some instances it might be better just to use one single cloud provider, or do you think hybrid is sometimes the way?
It depends. So it will often have it's a sort of a get out of jail answer, isn't it? So if there's a cloud infrastructure or multi-cloud conversation, and we'd talk about horses for courses, right? Cloud economics. So if you complete a solution assessment, what workloads need to go where, or what's the future state look like? If you need to maintain legacy data and legacy systems, then is it cheapest and easiest and the least risky to manage your own platform? Do you have the resources into the future for that? Do you want to manage power and air conditioning and everything else that goes with that? Potentially it could be easier to running in a hosted system or in a private cloud where you've just got access to my legacy systems, access to my legacy data, but I'm not developing on them. That's okay. Do they have an API? We could, connect that system's API to public cloud as well. So it may be the cheapest option in that space. Look, public cloud, you can reserve instances, you can set up savings plans for things that aren't changing. You can get the price right down on it as well. And then, beyond that, you can use archive tier or cold storage for long-term savings in that space as well. So there's no easy answer, and it depends. But that conversation generally goes into cloud economics, and let's pull apart the environment. What's the future state look like? What's the legacy requirement? What's the data retention you need to do? And what systems are you planning on developing, or how can we help integrate? What are the pain points in that space as well?
Case by case scenario.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. Well, I think we will wrap it up there, but thank you so much for joining us, Luke, and for sharing your insights. Very grateful to have had you on the show.
Yeah, no worries. Thank you.